skilled tradesmen specifically are aging out faster than they're coming into the industry. So just from a numbers perspective, any smart person looking at the industry can say there either is already, you're feeling it, or there will be a labor shortage.
Hello, professional property managers. Andrew Smollett here with the Triple Win podcast. We have a special guest today. We've got Will Parrish, who's co-founder and chief customer officer at Lula, which is a maintenance platform for property managers, and it helps them coordinate vendors, resolve work orders, solve maintenance issues faster. I've seen Lula over the past few years really growing and taking hold in the space. Some great momentum. Will, Bo, Nate, there's a great team over there, great people doing some really cool things. We wanted to invite them on because they really have a unique perspective to share here. But before we get into the topics and what we're going to be covering, Will, thanks for joining us. And maybe you could just share a little bit more context about Lula, what you guys do for people who aren't familiar, and also your role as a chief customer officer today.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Andrew. Appreciate it. So, I guess to start out in my new role, Chief Customer Officer this year, as we've continued to grow, I think we felt more and more of a need to make sure the voice of the customer was pulled through and that we could operationalize, feedback from them, tech updates, just to make sure that really our customer base, as we're, 250 plus customers in the SFR space now, had a voice and had an advocate internally. So that's really been the focus this year. I think that's been the right move. And also it's more fun for me. It allows me to be closer to the customers and, have the customer interaction be a part of my day to day. So anyway, yeah, thanks for the intro. I'll do a quick overview of Lula. I think that's probably valuable. We have some people in the space that just see us as a vendor. We have other people that just think we're a technology company. And the truth is we're really, one of the only companies out there that marries the two together. So Lula is a maintenance platform, as you mentioned. We can handle the full life cycle of a work order. So we use both technology and people all the way from intake to invoice. So it's really, like I said, full life cycle of a work order. And so we handle all the triage, we handle all the scheduling, getting additional, pictures and information from residents. So we do all the resident interaction. Where we differ from most of the companies in the space is once we're ready to deploy a work order or dispatch it, we use our own vetted vendor network. And our vendor network is a managed network, which is a really important distinction. It's not a button you click to connect to a list of vendors or anything like that. They're Lula pros. We only approve about 15% of them to be on the Lula platform. They agree up front that they're going to use our technology out in the field. So they check in, they check out on 98% of the jobs we do. So we get real-time performance data, which we're pretty obsessive about. We love sharing that data with customers on speed of repair, resident satisfaction, average cost. Those are usually the three things that are most important. And then once we've completed the work and have full visibility into that work for our customers, we push everything back into their system of record via integration. So we're directly integrated to integration with, I would say, probably the 7 or 8 largest software platforms out in the SFR space. So really is a full life cycle of the work order that we manage. And for most of our customers, we're more of like a managed service where they've effectively said like, hey, we think maintenance is a thing that's keeping us from scaling. We want to go from, whether it's a regional account that wants to go from 500 doors to 2,000, or it's an owner operator that's got 5 to 10,000 doors. Usually they recognize maintenance as kind of that bottleneck that's keeping them from going where they want to go. And so they basically use us as a managed service to provide a best-in-class maintenance experience. So.
So if I play this back, what I just heard, Will, is like, hey, if I'm a broker owner of a property management business, or if I'm a COO and kind of ensuring the day-to-day, right, is all running, and I'm working with Lula, I'm not just getting a technology, right, that I do get that, right, for information, et cetera, but I'm really getting a complete solution, including the managed vendor network, as opposed to continually having to go out and search for vendors, vet vendors, et cetera. I can really bring both software and the managed service kind of together to own that full, maintenance outcome so that I can focus on other parts of my business. Is that right?
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, it's perfect. It's usually the options in the space have been one or the other. Like, hey, we'll help you with the dispatch piece, but if we can't find any pros, we're just going to kick it back to you. Or it's like, hey, we're a maintenance company, but you handle all the front end piece. And so that was the design from the beginning, was like full lifecycle management. We will handle maintenance for you. We'll give you residents a best-in-class experience from speed of repair, your owners from a cost perspective with our flat rate programs. And so let us do it. We're the pros in maintenance. It's all we focus on is SFR maintenance. You can focus on growing your business.
Love that. Okay. So great. That's helpful context. As we get into this, it's May, right, that we're recording this,
Yeah.
which means in the property management world, there's been like five conferences in the last 20 days.
That's right.
And so, um, you know, I know part of your role is staying really close to the market, right? Representing the voice of that market. In the conversations that I'm having with property managers over the past few weeks, the way we kind of articulate this at Second Nature is they're really up against it as it relates to what we call the triple squeeze, which
Mhm.
is three parts of that. One is rent growth has been
Mhm.
declining or flat. I was just seeing this morning in Peter Lohman's newsletter, Sam Ettinger is in a market where his rent growth is flat over the last 17 years uh,
Wow.
in Connecticut. I was like, okay, that's not most markets.
That's a tough market. Yeah.
But people are feeling their version of that kind of like recently, right? In the last couple of years, even seeing rents declining. The other aspect of this is that costs have been going up.
Yeah.
I saw a stat recently that the cost to maintain a property is up 40% over the cost in 2020. In 2025 and 26, that's up materially. You look at property taxes going up 4%, property insurance going up. It's a lot of pressure on the ownership and the PMC. And then finally is rising expectations because residents and property owners are all expecting communication, resolution, things faster than they ever had. They're expecting their needs to be anticipated more than they ever have, things to be personalized to them and less generic. And so all of these things like coming together, it puts property managers in a space where they don't have revenue growth coming in, but expenses are coming up and there's a pinch. And then on top of that, people are asking them to do more than they've ever done before and do it faster than they've ever done it before. And so that's kind of the systemic pressure that a lot of property management companies are feeling. And I think you sit and your company sits at like a very important, kind of spot with this and a great perspective on this. So I'm just curious, what part of that is you're having conversations, with operators, with third-party management, businesses, are you kind of seeing of how property managers are approaching that, right, from a strategy standpoint, or how they're thinking about moving their business forward in a market kind of condition
Yeah.
that we're in today?
Yeah, great question. We see that too. And I'd like to pretend like, when we started the company 9 years ago that we knew we'd be sitting here at this intersection today. Probably the truth is we accidentally landed in a really good spot, which is to say, like, we're tackling two of those things on a daily basis for our customers. And the first one is you're right, like costs are going up and even if it's not a third party property manager, it's the owner operator space, right? Like they've got a specific subset of properties, but maybe they're not buying anymore. Like those 5,000 properties you own, like that's it. You can't go out and bring on more doors to supplement that income. And so they're seeing a lot of squeeze on NOI as well. So the challenges are pretty similar. The main thing we've done is, based on customer feedback, we used to have a different pricing model, which is to say we kind of let our pros set their own price, but then we'd use our algorithm to make sure the most affordable pros got the job first, which we do still do for hourly work. But what we realized 2 or 3 years ago, based on customer feedback, is like customers want predictable pricing. They want flat rate pricing. And so we put together our flat rate catalog, which we continue to grow. I think we first did that 3 years ago. And so it's stuff like, if you have a hot water heater replacement, we're all in starting at 1250. And I think when people see that price, they're like, that's an amazing price. But the truth is, we have significant buying power on the parts and side, and we have significant negotiating power on the labor side, right? And so we can push those prices down to really best in market prices. And I think when people see a company like Lula, if people are smart, the first thing they might think is, well, like that's an aggregator. They just go get the same pros we could get, and then they add on top of that. But what our partners realize is, no, that's not where we stop. We push those prices down as far as we can so that they get best in market pricing. So the flat rate program's been really helpful. We do HVAC, we do roofing. I guess this is probably as good a place to any to make a big announcement, which is we're launching flat rate handyman. We're in pilot on that now, which that'll be 600 different handyman services that are all flat rate across the board. Predictable pricing. Customers will know exactly what a toilet swap's going to cost. They're going to know exactly, what a garbage disposal swap's going to cost. All the customers in our space have wanted that. The problem with it is to operational, they can put together a catalog that shows what things should cost, but then to like actually enforce that takes significant headcount, which is kind of counterintuitive to what they're trying to accomplish, which is better pricing, more profitability. So it really was beholden on somebody like us on the vendor side to put together a program. That way they don't have to enforce it. And so we're super excited about launching that. Our average ticket price has actually stayed steady over the last 3 years. And you're right, costs are increasing. Our margins have stayed largely similar, which is a good thing for us. Hopefully that continues to stay true. But we really accomplished it, just like I said, by kind of pushing that squeeze down on our pro network, which is incredibly valuable part of our business, which is to say, like, hey, you don't need to find work elsewhere. Lula will be your sole provider of business and a good partner to you, but in response, we need to give our customers great pricing. So that's one thing. And the other thing you mentioned is customer expectations. And where we sit, we see customers as both the resident. So our actual customer, of course, would be the third party property manager or the asset owner. But we have three customers, which you guys refer to some of this as the triple win, right? Like their owner for those third party property managers is our end customer as well. Because if they're not happy with what they're seeing, the property manager's not happy. The resident's also our customer. You can't have an upset resident. And so where I think we've really excelled there is about half of our employees are on our dev and engineering team. So like our ability to turn around customer feedback into significant technology changes and provide like a best in class experience is really pretty good. Like it's a strong capability of ours. And so when we hear from a customer like, hey, we need more visibility into what's going on in the work order. We don't want to have to call and ask what's going on. That's why we have these two-way integrations with software platforms like Gapfolio and Property Meld, right? But the other thing is like, hey, we hear you. How can we do that better? And our chief data and AI officer put together the Ask Lula extension, which basically sits over the top of our Slack channels. You can just ask Lula what's going on with the job, and you'll get every detail of what's happening in that job in real time so that you can give your asset owner an answer while you're on the phone with them, right? And so I think this is a great question because these two pressures are like the main things we hear both from existing customers and new customers. And it's why we show up to work every day, right? It's like this is what we're trying to tackle. So hopefully that wasn't too long of an answer, but it's something we're passionate.
Uh, I think this is great context and a great way to start. I mean, when I just think about the maintenance space, I think about what a challenging category it is from just a customer expectation standpoint,
Yeah,
because it's like you almost can't accomplish it fast enough, right, for a
yeah,
resident. And then you've got pressure on like the cost side, right, from the property owner who wants that predictable and like better pricing than they could get on their own. And then,
yeah,
I hear you providing great value to the property manager of like, here's great visibility, and the kind of things that make it easier to be communicating across these different stakeholders and a more managed process that really frees them up, right, to
yeah,
get. I never hear a property manager say, "I'm twiddling my thumbs, looking for
yeah,
looking for more to do." Um, and lining those kind of things all up, at the same time is important to really get, the whole system kind of like embracing, here's this way of doing things. I guess, how do you guys handle some of those, I guess, tensions? What I hear you saying is, um, hey, like as opposed to there's an extra cost into the system by adding an additional party in because of the scale, right, that you guys are bringing
yeah,
across folks, you've been able to keep where costs have been going up, right, 20 to 40%. You guys have been able to keep those costs largely flat, right, which I'm sure is keeping the property manager and the property owner in a better position. How do you balance that against like, hey, but we also need to get vendors that are getting out there fast. And then it sounds like if the vendors are taking on some of the margin pressure on their end, like, yes, they're getting volume on the other side of that, but it seems like a tricky problem to kind of like optimize all of that, so to speak. How do you guys like work through that and approach that?
yeah. I mean, you said it well. It's a really tricky problem to get through because it's a two-sided marketplace, right? You have to balance that, and we also have to recognize that the pros are also our customer, and we want the Lula Pro network to love Lula, to see us as a partner as well. So we don't want to push all of the pressure down to them, right? Like some of it has to fall on us, but yeah, we maintenance is tricky because the very first thing that you're going to have to talk to a potential partner about is like, hey, let's just understand that even if we're the best in the business, we're still going to fail sometimes. It's maintenance. It doesn't go perfectly, right? What we really propose to them is like, now you've got a partner, somebody who will work through this with you if and when it doesn't go well. And it will inherently, like something's going to go wrong with maintenance from time to time. From the pricing perspective, yeah, it is really tough to balance. We use technology a lot to ensure we get it done as fast as possible. The way we stack our algorithm is based on a number of factors, but like at pros pricing, availability, proximity to the work, those types of things. We are obsessive about KPIs and performance metrics. I think on average, our time to complete a work order is just at 4 days right now, but somewhere around 60% of our work orders are done in a day or less, which is it's fast. Like it is really fast. So we've got a really engaged pro network. And we really, like I said, we kind of lean on that on technology and the algorithm to make sure we're getting it to the right pros so we can get it done. But you're right. 100% of the customers we talk to, when we say what's important, they're like, well, I want you to do it fast and I want my residents to be happy, but it also has to be super inexpensive. We're like, okay, so everything basically is what you're saying, right? And so it is hard, but we do. I mean, those are the three things. I mean, and that's sort of like, again, you talk about like the three layers of the triple win. Like those are the three things every customer has in common that they want us to accomplish. And so those are the three areas that we try to drive a best in class experience for not just our customers, but again, also our pro network and the residents and the owners. So that's a really long way to say, yeah, you're correctly stating that it's a tricky proposition.
Yeah. And so, Will, maybe you can give an example, one of your customers, but like I would think about before they were working with you versus like 12 months after working with you, like in their business, what are the KPIs or kind of outcomes, that they would see like, hey, here's what we're accomplishing now, or here's what's been driven now. Like how have you guys kind of thought about that impact and how that gets quantified?
So I'll go back to a longtime customer and they have no idea I'm about to give them a shout out, but like what you want to hear from customers is I brought you on to make my life easier and you made it easier, right? Like that's why Lula exists. I think it's even in our tagline, it would say make maintenance easier, right? But we've got a customer here in Kansas City, Premier Property Management, smaller regional property manager, around 300 doors, and great guys. And so we brought them in. We'd done work with them for about a year or two, and we just said, hey, would you come in and just like give us some feedback, maybe even like do a video testimonial? And they're like, yeah. So we said, let's talk first. So we meet them in the conference room. And even better than, hey, you guys made our lives easier. They told us like we basically inherited this business from our parents, and we were going to shut it down. Like we didn't want to do it. We didn't like showing up to work, and it was all because of maintenance. Like it was ugly, it was hairy. Like we didn't necessarily have the background to do it, and like it just the juice wasn't worth the squeeze for us. They're like, we found you, and we said, let's give it a shot, and they're still a customer all these years later. And that, like, of all the testimonials we've ever gotten, like these guys were being genuine. Like, yeah, we didn't want to do this anymore. It wasn't fun. We were going to go find other careers. And so, to me, like that is like the perfect scenario of where Lula exists. Is like you really like property management. You want to do it. You want to do everybody wants to do the best they can, right? But there's this one piece over here that almost unanimously, 9 times out of 10, if you're having an honest conversation with somebody, they'll say like, I don't love that, and I don't think we do it great, and it's not really helping us grow. And that's why we exist. It's like tag us in, right? We'll take that. We'll let you grow to three other markets if you want to, because we're in 51 markets around the US, right? Like we'll be your strategic partners. So that is really one of the best feedback I think I've ever gotten from a customer. As far as KPIs, we do, with every customer, we do regular check-ins, and every one of those check-ins is focused on performance. So, what are our performance metrics? We look at speed of repair, we look at one trip resolution, we look at resident satisfaction, which is critical. For a lot of our customers, we do review boosting, which is to say, like, hey, when we get a 5-star review, which is more than 93% of the time, we can push them to your website if you want to boost your reviews as well, right? So like we're happy to share in the positive interactions and reputation that we're building for Lula with our customers. But yeah, we really will allow our customers to kind of determine what KPIs they want to track, because the fact that our pros are using our app in the field allows us to turn around pretty quickly just about any KPI that somebody has or thinks is meaningful.
Hmm. And so if I'm just thinking about this, like you're talking about some good things. So like one is, hey, you were talking about resident reviews and right resident satisfaction, and
Yep.
obviously that's trackable over time, and here's how that's improving. You were talking about speed to repair. Like I'd love to talk just more specifically about what does excellent performance look like,
Yeah.
your standpoint. What are some of the like standards and benchmark? Earlier you talked about, I think it was 60% of work orders getting completed, or addressed within a day. And the average time, I think, but somewhere around 4 days. Can you walk through some of these standards of like, hey, here's kind of what we generally see right out in the market, and then here's what we think excellent really, really looks like, but that's achievable, so to speak.
Yeah. It's also tricky because there aren't industry standards. There are folks that are really smart trying to create those. I mean, I know you have Ray over at Property Meld on a lot. Like Ray and his team are really smart folks. I know they're trying to present that. The Appfolio team, same. The trickier, and this is actually it's a little bit trickier for us in those platforms as well, because So we look at it as like there's a service request and then there are work orders. And a service request may include multiple work orders, right? Like the service request could be, hey, there's a leak inside my wall. Well, within that is a plumber needs to stop the leak. But unfortunately, the way the industry was created, plumbers don't do drywall. You learn the hard way. So now you got to queue up a second. So there's two work orders within that. And because we're really an all-in-one where we can do both the leak and the drywall, sometimes I think the speed of repair metric for us on these other platforms gets a little misrepresented because our speed of repair on that work order may be 10 days, but the truth is we stopped the leak within 12 hours, right? And then we
Right.
had to get a quote for the drywall, and then we came out and fixed the drywall. So like aligning metrics is actually really tough. And that's why it's really important on the front end when we're bringing a new customer on is like, how do you see this? And to make sure that they understand, like, here's the concept of a service request versus the concept of a work order. And I think largely once you walk through that, people are like, yeah, I agree. It also makes it tricky for us on platforms, like Melter at Foley, because, we will be compared to both the drywall person and the plumber from speed of repair. And those were two separate work orders. Whereas we pulled it all the way through, right? We were a one-stop shop, but now it looks like, hey, it took Lula 7 days, but it took the plumber a day and it took the drywall pro 6 days, right? And so I think those are things that can be difficult for us to manage, and we try to educate as much as we can. Our standards are what we're looking to accomplish is we want that speed of repair across the board to be at 4 days. Um, Even in the busy season, anybody in this industry knows like May through August is not built the same as the other months. It looks different. It's more stressful. But we really don't ever want to see that number swell up to 5 days or 5 days plus. We try to keep it needs to start with a four. The percentile piece where like the percentage of work orders that we're accomplishing in a day or less, it always needs to be greater than 50%. Like to us, that's a thing that really doesn't exist in the market as a standard. What percentage of the work orders can you complete in a day or less? But to us, that is like a Lula special sauce. Like I don't know if other people can do that, right? And so we always want to make sure that that number is in front of our customers. The resident satisfaction, like it's always got to be 4.7 or above. NPS has to be above 80. Like those are just things that we're obsessive about, and constantly tweaking and iterating different processes to try to make sure we're getting like positive interactions with residents. So for us, those are really the key things. A lot of the pricing metrics that are important are really being taken care of by our flat rate catalog, right? So now that we don't have variable pricing on all these things, we know that as long as customers are leveraging us, and we tell customers too, like when we show you the flat rate pricing catalog, first of all, they almost certainly won't get better pricing very often. But even if they have a pro that they can get better pricing than that on, is like, are you getting that on all of those work orders? Because this is our price for each market every time you send us the work order, like what it is, right? And so that's really on the pricing perspective. We don't manage as much the KPIs there because we have that flat rate catalog. So we're basically ensuring it on the front end, if that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, I think the way you pose the question is right. Like we are really pretty obsessive about those KPIs on a daily basis. And we have a number of people within this company whose job it is to just watch and monitor and think about like what process improvements can we make that will make that number better.
Okay, you shared a couple things here that I know there's people listening to this right now. They're like, wait. Can I go back to that? Because like I want to understand more about that. 80 NPS. You almost just like said that in passing, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that strikes me as like shockingly high for what this is in the context that it is. Because when I think 80 NPS, I'm thinking like that's on the level of Amazon, Netflix, like some of the just dominant, like amazing consumer brands and what they're
Yeah.
delivering. And in a category like maintenance, to be delivering on an 80, like I think you got to share. Can I ask you to share a little bit of like, man, what has really gone into that? What have you guys learned?
Yeah.
That's really driving that number up. That a professional property manager listening to this could say, wow, like actually maintenance could be accretive to my NPS and
Yeah.
really, really be driving it up as opposed to a drag.
Yeah, there's a few things, and one thing I do always want to point out on that is the way that we're actually a little more punitive on ourselves the way we calculate it. However, we do it based on our resident reviews, not our customer reviews, because really at the end of the day, the resident interaction is what drives kind of the customer's interaction with Lula, right? If everything's 5 star, there's no reason for a customer to ever be upset with Lula. It's when a 1 star comes through, and those are the ones where we hear from our customers, right? We know how the industry works. It's the loud one out of 5 stars that creates friction, and now the customer's reaching out to us. And so what we try to do is, even if that's less than 1% of the work we do, it's the visible part, it's the audible part that our customers are having to reach out to us on. And so we try to minimize that as much as possible. We also try to make sure our customers see, like, just from a sheer volume perspective, like how many of these are 5-star interactions. But yeah, so communication is key, even if the communication isn't good. We learned that a long time ago. Even if it's bad news, people just want to know, right? They don't like not knowing what's going on. And so we have a number of different processes and team members that are responsible for that communication. And that's kind of the way we empower them and coach them, is like, you have to make sure everybody knows what's going on with the situation, even if it's news you don't want to deliver, right? We also empower them to be creative with solutions. And I always think of this, even outside of our general services team, I always think of this example that occurred a couple of years ago. And we had a fridge that went out in St. Louis, and I can't even remember why, but we could not get one same day. Like, we tried, we were going to get somebody out there same day to swap it. Food's going to go bad. And it just, for whatever reason, I don't know if they weren't in stock or if there was a shortage at that time, we just
Yep.
couldn't deliver it. And I remember one of our senior managers just happened to see the work order and just popped in and said, "Yeah, no problem." He went DoorDash or something from Target, I think maybe Postmates, and sent over like 4 big coolers, a bunch of bags of ice, like just went out of his way, like a gift card, just to make sure they knew, like, hey, this is not how this usually goes for us. Like, we can usually swap this out same day. It didn't work today. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. And I always think of that example as like having like an employee within Lula. Nobody told him to do it, just saw it and said, like, that probably doesn't feel good to the resident. I'm just going to take action here. They didn't ask for approval from anybody. And I love that. Like, that is probably the main thing that our team is empowered to do, is like, we want positive resident interactions. The other thing is, anytime a review comes in, if it's not 4 or 5 stars, it cues like an all channel communication. And there are people whose job it is to reach out immediately to the resident and find out, hey, what went wrong? Where did we miss here? And what can we do to make it right? The magic in that, like we talked about, like, even when something goes badly, just being communicative, is a lot of those, like, let's say it was a 1-star review and we reached out to the resident right away, will turn into a later 5-star review, because you don't have to be perfect. You just have to hear the resident and take care of the problem, right? And so it's really a mindset for our service team, which is just to make sure you do everything you can to drive 5-star reviews from the resident, that they're satisfied and happy with the interaction they had.
Well, I love what you're sharing there because it'd be easy to understand, hey, there's a culture around just completing the task and completing the process or the workflow exactly as it is, versus it's clear that you guys really work to instill this culture of, hey, we want to own this outcome of a satisfied resident. And so when the process isn't working or going as expected, as opposed to just that's the way that it is and going with it,
Yeah.
hey, what can we do to still deliver on this need and maybe even in an unexpected way? It's funny how sometimes those scenarios, when you handle them that way, it's like it leads to a 5-star review because they didn't expect you to handle it that way, right?
Yeah, the expectation for service was that it's maintenance, it's just going to be okay, and whatever, deal with it, right? So just the mere fact of showing you care, or having, gratitude or hospitality as concepts, right? Like, it sometimes, even if the experience was bad, the way you handled it can make it a 5-star experience. So
Yeah, that's really great. So another thing that came up earlier that I want to make sure we didn't miss, this flat rate pricing, which you've covered a couple times. Can you just clarify, is this like flat rate price? Like, is there just like a price book, right? Of here's what it is for a water heater, right? Here's what it is for this item, that item, this type of job, et cetera. And so, hey, like, here's a price book that you kind of are able to deliver to the customer and set expectations around that. And I mean, I got to admit, I know you said you've kept things pretty flat and consistent over time, but
yeah.
it, are you guys managing that through like, hey, you've got contractual agreements for a certain time period with folks and it gets updated once a year? Like, how does that get managed over time?
Yeah, yes, we have to have the ability to update it as needed, just because of some of these changes that have occurred. But we do everything we can to not update it. And a good example would be the HVAC switch. I think it was last summer when they changed some of the system requirements and coolants that you had to use. And we did not pass along any costs there. We just said, like, from a customer perspective, flat rate has to, it's like a trust thing, right? We want our customers to know that the price they see is the price they get. Like, could something happen in the marketplace that requires us to occasionally change the price? Yes. Like, we still have to run a business, but we have worked really, really hard not to change that. The other thing that we want to make sure our customers know is, like, this isn't like, hey, we're going to show you a price and there's all kinds of change orders. Like, even on an HVAC swap, and you see a price starting at, whatever it is, like 4,200 for a full system swap. Like, we're not going to go in there and hit any change orders to our customers unless the work is $500 or more. If we get on site and there's $400 worth of work that needs to be done that we didn't quote, we don't care. We just eat it because we want the customer to send us that work to know that when I think I'm getting a flat rate price, I'm getting a flat rate price. It gives them confidence that they know what the price is going to be. And I think more than anything, particularly in the property management space for third-party property managers, it like empowers them to better communicate with their owners. Because especially, well, I say especially retail owners, maybe it's the same in the enterprise space, but like they never like the price they see, right? I think it's just like a reflex that they push back on it. Like, hey, is that a good price? Even if it's a great price. And having that flat rate catalog allows our customers, like the PMs and maintenance coordinators, to say with confidence, like, hey, this is a great price. Like, I can get you a second quote, but it's not going to get better. And also, the company we're using can get this done today,
Mhm.
right? So the flat rate catalog is really important to us. How we present it's really important to us. It is a price book. When we onboard a new customer, whether they're on contract with us as like a managed service where we're going to do 100% of their maintenance or we're just doing overflow for what they would normally send to third party. Yes, we provide them that book. We ask them to provide it to everybody within their organization because we feel like the more people see it, the more work they're going to send us because the pricing is amazing. So,
Okay, so I want to ask just one or two more questions to kind of bring this to a close. And you know, as we're talking about the expenses and where we start with this kind of rise, like
yep.
again, you guys have a unique seat. You're tracking this. You're looking across markets. I mean, all kinds of different categories, everything else. And I'm curious what your perspective is on what have been the drivers of the rising expenses. Like, I hear things all the time of, okay, there's a labor shortage in certain categories, and that's really like driving the labor cost up.
Yeah.
And like, what do you forecast a little bit of, hey, in the years ahead, these are going to be the things that you kind of are expecting to see based on what you're seeing the drivers today and kind of the drivers tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, first, let's address the labor shortage piece. I hate to even say this out loud, and I'll like knock on wood every time I say it. It makes sense that a labor shortage is going to occur. Skilled tradesmen specifically are aging out faster than they're coming into the industry. So just from a numbers perspective, any smart person looking at the industry can say there either is already, you're feeling it, or there will be a labor shortage. We haven't felt that yet,
Yep.
but we're smart enough sitting where we sit to know that there's a potential that that's coming. I think what we feel is like because of the experience we provide for our pro network, we're probably like the place of last resort where they're really sticky, right? And so maybe there's a reason we're not feeling that yet, but we know that that could exist. That has not really been an issue for us from a pricing perspective as far as costs go. It's almost all been about the economy and the price of goods sold, like procurement of the HVAC parts, procurement of appliances, like those things are continually becoming more expensive for a variety of reasons, some like macroeconomic, some industry specific. And that's where we really have to make like decisions about, we have to balance Lula as a business. Like, we've been lucky to be able to stack, like 70% growth year over year over year over year, even as we get older and more mature. We've also been lucky to be in a position where like we've got a healthy enough business that we probably don't ever have to fundraise again, right? But those things don't mean that we don't have to run a healthy business. And so that's really the balance is like, as we see these costs coming in, like what can we absorb personally so that our customers continue to have a great experience versus where do we just have to acknowledge to our customer base, like we're feeling the squeeze here too, but it's almost all about around that procurement of parts piece. Really, the labor's been consistent. And anything else internally from like a cost perspective, we have a number of different things that we believe culturally, but one of them is always tackle it with technology first. Like, don't just hire somebody for it, right? And so, like internally, as far as like our cost to really perform, like we've maintained like pretty consistent there as well. So it's just that piece that we continue to monitor around procurement.
Yeah. So it sounds like, hey, really any labor effect to whatever degree that has happened, pretty mitigated. Obviously, still keeping an eye to the future, and that could
Yeah,
present itself as a change go forward. It's really the materials, right?
yeah,
That's been driving up a lot of the expense over the last few years, is what you're seeing there. Um, I want to ask this last question, Will, and then I'll open it up in case I miss something and just give you an opportunity to share a final thought. But let's say for a second that Lula didn't exist for a second, and you're sitting in the operator chair, the COO chair. Like, if you were leaving, like turning off this podcast and saying, "I'm going to go do three things right now to really improve, right, the outcomes and the health of my business by focusing on this in the maintenance space." what would be the actions that you would be taking right now in 2026? I know that can be contextual to business, but you can speak in generalities.
Yeah, no, and I think it's a great question. I mean, I think the first thing that I see some people trying to do, it's more difficult to do than I think people think, but like you have to have some sort of scoring metric for your vendor base. Otherwise, you don't know. You're operating off of thinks and feels, and that's tough. Anytime we get feedback from a customer, that's anything that's not positive, like, hey, show us examples, give us some examples, and we'll take action on that. But without like hard data, it's hard to manage a business. And so I think, if Lula didn't exist, or if there's somebody out there that doesn't use Lula, or maybe, did but doesn't anymore, like I think you have to find a way to score your vendors based on those three things that are most important, which are almost always the same things, right? The speed of repair, resident satisfaction, and the cost. And even there, I mentioned earlier, like there's some real nuances as to how you do that. It's not as simple as like when did I send the work order and when did it get, completed. Like some of we chop it down into like six different areas throughout the speed of repair, which is like how long did it take for a pro to pick it up from the time we send it out? We call that job velocity. Like that's an engagement. In our days to complete, how much of that was on the resident? So like if I reached out to a resident today and they said, yeah, I'm available next Wednesday. Well, there's 4 days that accrued that like it matters. It's a part of the speed of repair, but also we can't really impact it, right? How long does a job sit in quote approval or quote to be approved status? So maybe we send it to a customer and it sits with them for 4 or 5 days, right? And so there are all these like nuances within the speed of repair that make it difficult to do. But I think that's the first critical part. The other part I think is work order intake is like it's overlooked and often ignored, and it's the absolute most critical part of having a successful work order, which is anybody who has ever seen what a work order looks like when it comes from a resident originally, like it's not a lot of actionable stuff in there sometimes. It's hard to discern exactly what the issue is. And so when you go through that sort of triage and interaction with the resident, that's really a critical part to find out really specifically what the issue is that you're needing to fix. That way you know what the outcome is. That way the pro knows, right? But also just to arrange it in a consistent way so that you've got data around it, right? So that's another piece that I think the owner operators and third party PMs really struggle with is like they don't have the bandwidth to sit there and do that on every work order when it comes in. So it comes in and they just sort of assigned it, but it's like junk in, junk out sometimes, right? Like you don't get a good outcome because the work order wasn't very clean. And so I think those are the two areas where even customers that don't use Lula could focus and really like start to get and drive better outcomes themselves. The pricing stuff is hard. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of volume to like, just candidly, a part of the reason we have the ability to do that is just the sheer volume we have. There's not that many folks in the space that have volume similar to that, right? You're looking at the top end of the space, Progress, Invitation, Tricon, First Key, those folks. But as you get into maybe more of like the NARPM crowd, which we work with a ton, like if you have 300 doors, it's hard to push back on a vendor on price because you need to get the work done and you've got an owner kind of yelling at you like, hey, when is this going to be done? Right. And so I feel like that subsegment has to kind of accept one of the three more often. But I think our take on it is actually you don't like let us help you with that. So
Mm, yeah, yeah. Bring that scale brings a different kind of leverage,
it
right?
does. Yeah.
Okay. I would be remiss if I did not ask this question. I'm sure some people listening to this appreciate that we didn't talk about AI within the first 5 seconds of this, but
Yeah.
I think I would be remiss if I didn't at least bring it up of your perspective and point of view. You guys are obviously a tech forward bunch of
Yep.
one, how you see the opportunity for transformation and maintenance and the really AI strategy of where is it overhyped, underhyped? What's your kind of take on what kind of impact that can have on the maintenance space?
Yeah, I mean it's real, it's tangible. I think the people that are engaging with different solutions right now are seeing the benefits and gains of it. I also appreciate that you didn't bring it up on the front end because whether it's this industry or another one, there's also like a slew of solutions that are, quote unquote AI that are really like offshore call centers behind the scenes and just not like true AI solutions. But so one of our first C-level hires, anybody who looks at our business would probably say we did everything backwards, but it turned out to be accidentally correct, in my opinion. So one of our first hires was our chief data and AI officer, Lax Tagala, the great guy. At this point, I've known him for a number of years. He wasn't the AI officer then because it wasn't a thing. He was just our chief data officer, but he is now. And so even with like I mentioned, like our approach to problems is like solve with technology first. And so that's been a huge part of our component because we essentially operate the same way that the maintenance arm of a property management company were, right? Like we've got a team that's here in office that's responsible for managing the life cycle of the work order. And so some of the places where we deploy it today are just ensuring good communication, right? And so we have the Ask Lula feature we're going to be launching that sits over Slack today. We'll be launching the browser extension here in a week or so. And it's really powerful for one of our customers to be able to ask, like, what's going on with this job and to see like the full work order history. The cool part about it is, and even I fall victim to this sometimes, I'll use it and I forget that I can ask follow-up questions like, okay, well, how long is the drain line or what color of flooring was used? And to see like really detailed responses, it's not that our team can't do it, but it's just that that response, because it's AI, is always in real time, and we have so much data that it's actually a pretty like robust response, right? And so we've seen that the questions that come into our team, like, "Hey, what's going on with this work order?" have actually decreased by over 50% because they're using the Ask Lulu feature, and they're getting an answer they like. We ask customers during check-ins, and they're like, "Yeah, if I'm being candid, sometimes that answer is better than the one I got from the person on your team prior."
Hmm.
The other place we use it is intake. We've had Lumi out in the market for a while. We've got a number of customers using that for intake. That's our AI intake piece. It's also got a voice AI component that's really slick. My favorite thing about the voice AI piece is that it also has hospitality built in. It just sort of unprompts says some cool things like "Congratulations on your new house," or "I'm sorry you're having this experience," like things that you would want a customer service person to say. Um, so it does the de-escalation and triage on the front end. We used to do that manually with our team here, and they did a great job, but they're also a bottleneck, right? You only have so many team members. You want to make sure you've got a consistent approach to how you do it. So that's been super helpful. And then we've started to deploy it in a number of other ways internally as well. And I, I don't see it, and maybe I'm just old school in this way. Like I don't like to think of deploying AI as a way to replace people that are here. I don't think that's the best use for it. I don't think that, the people that make up Lula also make up the culture, and it's super important to us. That's where you get those five-star experiences and that NPS. But like, can we improve the customer experience in a way with it? Can we take human decision making out of the loop in some places so that we're more consistent and make sure that we have a better outcome? And the answer is yes. And I think the customers that we work with that we see engaging with AI, whether they're building out tools and agents themselves or working with other third-party customers, that's how most of them are approaching it. It's like, how can I grow more without adding additional people, but also maximize the people that I have, right? And that's really that's been our focus so far.
Hmm. Awesome. Well, I think that's a great note to wrap this up on. Will, if people were looking to connect or get in touch with you, or like, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, I can give my email directly. It's wparrish, Parrish @lula.life. They can also connect with us at www.lula.life and connect directly with our sales and account management team. Our information's pretty out there. Everybody in the industry seems to know Nate as well. So obviously we're pretty visible on LinkedIn and at conferences and shows. Um, Please come up and say hi. Yeah, we just kind of put a cap on it. We work with customers from 200 doors up to 80,000. So I think we're one of the only companies out there that can really work with people of all sizes and kind of breadth markets. We're in 51 markets across the US. So yes, if anybody's got questions or like to learn more about Lula, please reach out.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for the time today. I'm sure we'll see you around at the next IMN event or wherever we're headed to next. And listen, if you're listening to this, keep stacking your triple wins, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Take care.
Thanks, Andrew. See you next week.